then we can be set free to live and love. We may then be able to 12-step ourselves and others into emotional sobriety.
Well, there it is, Eric. Well, I always ask who's ever reading to take a moment and reflect on what stood out for you. What had the most meaning for you tonight?
Well, it's interesting because I thought I was going to latch on to something else. And of course, two things popped out while I was reading it, which I wasn't expecting. But in the first half, it talks that sentence that says the development of much more real maturity and balance. And the word balance kind of stuck out to me.
Yes.
Finding the balance of, you know, um, trying not between sticking up for myself and speaking my truth and not being dependent. So just there is a balance there. So that kind of stuck out to me. And then in the bottom half, let us look at surrender these hobbling demands, surrendering these the surrender piece. So the balance and surrender is what stuck out to me.
Yeah. Both very important, right?
Surrendering the hobbling demands of dependence,
Yeah.
trying to
Yep.
be okay, trying to be okay with things not being okay.
Yeah. Wow, that's the key, isn't it? I'm okay or I'm not okay, and that's okay, as Jelly Roll says.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, those two things stuck out, which wasn't expecting, to be honest.
Well, see, that's the great thing about it, and what I appreciate you doing. See, you came in with an idea of what you were going to say, and what's important in terms of what you're doing, the process is that you were open to being responsive to what happened rather than coming in with your agenda. So that, pay attention to that. Regardless of what those other two things mean, the fact that you flowed with what was happening for you is an example of what emotional sobriety is.
Hmm.
Because as soon as if you stayed on your agenda, then for whatever meaning these things had would have been brushed aside, which is essentially the same as dismissing yourself and erasing yourself and brushing yourself aside. And you didn't do that. See, that's the important thing. That's why I'm underscoring it. See, is that you stayed in touch with yourself as you did this. And that's at the heart of emotional sobriety. Cool, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me read tonight.
So, and if we do that, it'll probably be at the conclusion of these, we're at step 9. So we'll go through step 12, and maybe at the end of that, then we'll have a meeting where you can come in and ask questions and share your experience with emotional sobriety and the steps. Right now, we're doing this from the perspective of the 12 and 12, because this was written in 1950. And a lot of Bill's ideas started to come together to coalesce at this point in time in his recovery about emotional sobriety. And it's quite evident, especially steps 4 and on. We've been seeing that Bill is really, really sharing with us a lot of his insights about emotional sobriety. So that's what we're going to be doing. That's what we're going to be doing tonight. And we're continuing on. So let me go ahead and share my slides. I prepared some more slides for you tonight. You see, these first 9 steps are really critical to laying the foundation for a new way of life. And especially what happens in steps, and I'm going to focus on 6 and 7 tonight, which are really the steps that lead us into steps 8, 9, and 10, and 11, and 12. 6 and 7, I want you to think of those steps are the steps that we now pivot our consciousness towards this achieving emotional sobriety. The way that Bill describes it in the 12 and 12 is that these steps 6 and 7 are about developing the best possible attitude we can have towards life. Well, that is synonymous with emotional sobriety. That's what emotional sobriety is all about, is having the best possible relationship we can have with our experience, whether it's our experience with ourselves, whether it's our experience with a problem we're having, or whether it's our experience with someone we love and care about, or whether it's our experience with reality, or whether it's our experience with the God of our understanding, is emotional sobriety is about developing the best possible relationship we can have in all these areas of our life. And then he specifically, after 6 and 7 happens, we're told to make, a list of all the people that we've harmed and become willing to make amends to them. What's happening in steps 8 and 9 is now applying that best possible attitude towards developing the best possible attitude towards our relationship with others. And that's what we're going to be focusing on. And we're going to be really trying to look at, well, what does that mean? Because the truth of it is none of us really get much of an idea of what it means to be, in a healthy relationship, or what is our role in a true partnership. Bill even says that of true partnership, we have very little knowledge, and that's true for all of us. All of us, we grow up in a society that's incredibly immature. And of course, we can't grow much beyond that unless we start to do some of this work, which I'm glad some of you, so many of you are here to start doing that. So after step 8, and this is one of the wonderful things about the way Bill designed the steps, is step 8 creates a charge, right? It resolves the energy that we got about now committing ourselves to the best possible attitude. And so we're going to take that and we're going to apply it to relationships. And so we make a list. We've discharged that charge that created in step number 7. But now a new charge. We now are asked to make amends to these people and to become willing to do so. So here we are now, and this step now resolves that tension. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible. These are, of course, the people we've harmed, except when to do so would injure them or others. So let's explore that a little bit. What kind of things are we learning in step 9? Well, we talked before about step number 2 is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Well, we're not talking about a mental illness. What we're talking about is soundness of thinking. And so you can see how this step is really cultivating this idea is to be thoughtful. I love what Herb said at one point. He says that most of us, before coming to the program, it was ready, fire, aim, right? There was no ready, aim, fire. And what we're learning to do is ready, aim, and fire. Is that we're going to be thoughtful about what we're doing. This is the way that Bill says it in the step 9. Good judgment, a careful sense of timing. Do you see the aiming that's going on here? Courage and prudence. These are qualities we shall need when we take step 9. These are qualities that we will need as we now continue this journey to achieve emotional sobriety. Because being thoughtful, that's what living in the pause is all about. The way that Rollo May said it, he says there's a gap between the stimulus and our response. He says, in that gap, if we can move into that gap, we can now explore, use that gap, is the way he says it, constructively to search at all of the possible responses that we can have and choose the one that's going to really, really meet our needs in the best way possible. And now, what are our needs? Is to act for ourselves without being selfish. That's one of the goals that we have in emotional sobriety, and to act for others without losing ourselves. And those are the kinds of things that we want to reflect on in that space. So, what are some of the therapeutic and the lessons? Well, in order to achieve emotional sobriety, we need to do what? Well, this is very important because if emotional sobriety is freedom, we got to talk about, well, how do you achieve that freedom? Well, first of all, is we have to unhook what we're doing from the outcome. is that we focus more on what we're doing and doing it for the right reason rather than what it's going to do. This is a very different way of doing things. We're no longer trying to manipulate other people by our behavior. We are trying to maintain a sense of our integrity. And that's why we focus on what we're doing and we separate that from the outcome. So we're focusing more on the process than the outcome. We want to pay attention to how we're going to make amends and whether it's an appropriate thing to do or not, given each particular case. So we're also learning the importance of discernment, of differentiating when this might be a good idea from when it might not be. I don't know if you're like me or not, but I like to get some of these rules and then I just want to apply them everywhere. Like at first when I came into the program, I wanted to be honest about everything to everyone. Well, that sometimes it may not be the best idea. We want to become trustworthy by taking responsibility for our hurtful and harmful behavior. In the meeting we had just prior to this, we talk about, some of the lessons we learned from, we were exploring what did our mother teach us about our relationship with our emotions or how to express our emotions. And for most of us, the lessons we got is if I'm feeling something, then somebody's to blame for what I'm feeling. Somebody's making me feel the way I'm feeling. And so I externalize, I attribute my experience to these external events. What we're doing and what we're learning up to step 9 is that I am responsible for the experience I'm having. Nobody is making me feel anything. If I'm feeling something, these are my feelings. And my feelings are happening because of the meaning that I'm giving to the experience I'm having. That's what makes us feel what we feel. And if I take a situation personally, of course I'm going to upset, especially if there's some unenforceable rule that I think somebody's violating and they're doing it because they're not respecting me. And so what we see is that up to step 9, we're learning more and more that it's not all about me. And we're learning to now be able to see other people as they are rather than seeing them as a reflection of us or how they feel about us. We're becoming more trustworthy by being able to deepen our empathy for how our behavior has affected other people. You see, you cannot be a healthy partner or you cannot have a true partnership without there being empathy. Without empathy, there's not going to be any love. Without empathy, people aren't going to feel safe. And what we're doing here is we're really, really getting honest with ourselves and seeing how lacking we have been in this area. That we haven't focused on how we're affecting other people. We're more focused on how other people are affecting us. So we're turning that around. We're focused on changing ourselves rather than focusing on what others need to change to make us feel better. This is radical responsibility, as we like to say. So what we know is that the amends are intrinsically rewarding, which means they're done not for acceptance, approval, or validation for others. We're doing them because we want to take responsibility and free ourselves from what we've done that's created a problem. We are on a campaign of liberation, and we're liberating ourselves from our past. And by liberating ourselves from our past, we're learning as much as we can about what it means to be in a healthy relationship. Bill says it this way, above all, we should try to be absolutely sure that we're not delaying because we're afraid, meaning that we're not making the amends, that we're holding back. He says, for the readiness to take full consequences of our past acts and to take responsibility for the well-being of others at the same time is the spirit of step 9. Order to achieve emotional sobriety, we need to unhook others from our expectations of what they were supposed to do or how they were supposed to behave. See, that's what we're learning with this step. We're learning that acceptance is a key element of emotional sobriety, that our amends are determined by the context of the situation. And in this way, we're having an appropriate and honest relationship to reality. In other words, we're not going to make amends to someone if it's going to cause a lot of trouble in that person's life. We want to be thoughtful as we approach this. We're being Bill's calling us to this thoughtfulness over and over and over again in step 9. We're also learning that in order to have emotional sobriety, that change requires taking risks. It also requires trying things on, trying to do something different, sometimes doing something exact opposite of what we did before. We're learning that we need to surrender the need to be right or to be righteous and to hold on to these ideas. Well, God, I can't make amends. Look at what this other person did to me. In order to achieve emotional sobriety, we need to realize that through the experience, the value of delivering our entire message directly. You see, so many of us gossiped about when something went wrong. Instead of going to the person that we had an issue with and dealing with them directly, we would talk to somebody else about it or go talk to our therapist about it or whatever. But when we grow up, we go to the person that we have the issue with and we enter into a relationship with them and talk to them about it in a way that we create an opportunity to resolve the problem. We're encouraged in this step to pay attention, to really try to discover the words in us that most accurately reflect what we want to say, and then also to find the courage to speak them. And Maslow says this, the truth will set us free. We've heard that several times, but many people don't hear the second half of what he said, only if we have the courage to live it. That's what this step is about. We're going to set ourselves free with the truth, but we're going to have the courage to speak it. And we're also learning that we are as important as others, no more and no less. So I have no right to get well at somebody else's expense. We take responsibility, we're responsible to other people, not for them. So with that said, let me pause and let me invite my colleagues in the room to share their thoughts about this, and then we'll see where this takes us tonight.
I'm Herb. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey,
One of my most favorite steps. Did you want to say something, Alan?
no, please jump right in. Jump right in.
I'm overcoming my shyness.
Yeah, you're really struggling with it, I can
He just didn't know you're an alcoholic. He was surprised.
tell.
And this is probably the most difficult step in the process, and the one that I now see after I had done it at 5 years of sobriety with guidance, I now see is the most important. The most difficult, the most important one to have guidance from a sponsor or step guide, a therapist, an attorney, an accountant, a knowledgeable person with experience. Those are two components. There's a lot of, I'm very respectful of people in AA, but there's an awful lot of knuckleheads. And they think they know something because they think they've done something. And it's probably true a little bit, but it's my experience that it really that requires specific knowledge about the specific interaction that we're addressing in the 8-step harm and the specific process and action to take or not. How do the approach needs to be validated and or directed by somebody with experience. And that's just general. It may or may not be indicated in the 12 and 12. Thank you, Alan, for bringing out the main points of the 12 and 12, especially focused on why are we doing this? It's hard. I mean, it's impossible. In fact, we can only do it in prayer and with guidance from other people, from my experience. Keep in mind what the motive and the vision is, freedom. The big book is very clear, though. In this suggested, it's got 8 pages talking about how to do step 8 and 9. It's so important. And it says, oh, yeah, although we're there to clean up our past and to get our lives in order, it's not the priority. The priority, and Ellen mentioned it, and that is their freedom to acknowledge our role, our part, our contribution to the misery in somebody else's life. And in that acknowledgement, to give them some sense of healing and some sense of possible forgiveness, forgiving of us, of our forgiving them, whatever the dynamic is. I found and discovered later on, after I made my amends, the whole area of forgiveness, which is just a powerful summary of steps 4 through 9 that have been codified by psychologist Fred Luskin in his book, Forgive for Good. If you haven't read it and you have done steps 4 through 9 and you have some exposure experience to the step 9 process, you will really treasure reading that book by Fred Luskin, Freedom. The big book confirms freedom from addiction. And what Alan and the group is talking about is freedom from bondage of self, freedom from unmanageability, freedom from immaturity, freedom to have a balanced life, emotional sobriety. Freedom from addiction is the minimum promise. A wonderful promise, but it's minimal by my experience now. Freedom from unmanageability, freedom to be conscious of managing our lives and our relationships effectively. Not perfectly, but effectively. Freedom. Bill uses the term the joy of living. I'm going to stop there. Thanks, Alan, and the group.
No, but your emphasis on the freedom from the bondage of self is so right on. Because, see, by putting that other person's experience and well-being ahead of our own interest, we're turning something around, right? Instead of making it all about me, now I'm learning to respect you, to see you. Before I was only seeing me, regardless of whether I was fell out of whatever side of the bed, whether I was arrogant or I felt like I was the worst person in the room, I was still making it all about me. See, that's the interesting thing. In that what we're doing here is we're now learning the importance of being aware of the other person and who they are and what it means to them and how we impact them.
The
Well,
truth
it's
will
more.
set you free,
I'm
but
sorry. Go
first,
ahead.
the truth will set you free. John McCarthy said, but first it will embarrass you.
It'll piss you off. That was the other one I've heard.
Piss you off, embarrass you. You're right. You're right. That's right. All
I
right.
should give a workshop on that because I'm not easily embarrassed. So maybe I should teach people how just to, go, once you just fully acknowledge, your idiocy, expect people to notice it. But what I was going to say is this is the phrase that kept coming in my head as you were talking, both of you, was restore ourselves to sanity. It's like, and this is a restoration step to me. This is I love it's a powerful word, restoration, and it's like it's. I think I'm tempted to call it like ironic or paradoxical and stuff like that because of the idea that we do what has felt counterintuitive to us a lot of times in the past, and that is turn our attention to somebody else. And then we discover the tremendous benefit that we get from that. But I don't think that. I think we just need to learn that's a principle of it's a principle of our recovery, but it's a principle of living a good life. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. It's like, to basically identify where we have done some had negative impact on others. Um, by going back and accepting, and to me, I always think about this is me being very clear about my accepting responsibility. It's not about not now I'm going to blame myself or I'm going to beat myself up. It's like, and the people that help me with this always emphasize this is much more about acknowledging something than it is apologizing. It's like there may be an apology in there, but it doesn't start that way for me. It's like I just need you to know that I am aware of when we were together. This is what was happening with me, and I realize I have the realization that there are, and I do not act like I know everything that it impacted them. I say these are some of the things I know that were probably really tough for you, um, and we want to care how people respond. I know that, but that's not the measure, because as long as because that becomes another condition of that's not emotionally sober, which is I have to have this person respond in a certain way in order for me to be all right. It's like, no, I don't. It's like I can certainly I can tell you what I hope the response will be, and I will celebrate it if it is. But I will also know that that's one of the risks you do. I mean, there's some of those amends, I just sort of have in my life. I've just really creeped up on them slowly because I was cringing and ducking and waiting for the response to be very, very difficult, and sometimes it was, but most of the time I I get surprised about how good people are. People people are, I complain about people a lot, and I'm and we all have lots of experiences working around with ourselves and others that people can be really messed up, but there's also a lot of good, and in this step, in the communication I have had in this step, it really does. I feel like it puts me in touch with that part of me, the best part of me, and the best part of other people.
That's cool. Well said, Thom.
Thanks.
My sponsors always also emphasized that it's not an apology so much as it is, owning my side of the street, acknowledging what has happened. And then the important thing being that I change my behavior going forward, right? It doesn't mean anything to say I'm sorry and to keep doing the same thing over and over
Oh,
again.
it's so important, Julie. My sponsor always did that. I said the word amend does not mean apology; it means change.
Yep.
I got just tired of him saying that over and over again. It's like you were talking about, Alan, before. We need that repetition to get those things in there, and that's so important, Julia. So thank you for saying that.
And the other part being that, I give the person a chance to respond and I just listen. I don't argue.
Right.
Yep. And that's
Definitely.
really difficult. And that's that open-mindedness I think we talked about at the beginning of the meeting. The other thing that came up for me was the making amends to myself. Was a big part and continues to be a big part of this for me. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention, I don't know how it fits in here, but I learned about it this week and I thought it was very cool. Is I learned about, I have a therapist who works with internal family systems, and he talked about the 8 C's, which are, your true self, I guess. And when we're connected to that best part of ourselves, we can show up with compassion and clarity and connection and courage and curiosity and creativity. And it came to me that, emotional sobriety is a path to connecting that part of myself more frequently. And when I'm able to connect to that part of myself, I can do all these things. I can take responsibility as we do in step 9. I can take risks. I can take things less personally, and I'm able to try new solutions. So,
Thanks, Julia.
And
I
congratulations, Alan, on your sobriety birthday. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm beginning to have a better attitude towards your sobriety.
I think you I think you might just get this thing. Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to be too, I don't want to, give too much confidence to you, but I'm thinking good.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned that, Tom. I was speaking one time and I said, humility is an honest assessment, right? An honest and clear assessment of ourselves. And I'd said, like, I've got this sobriety thing down. I'm not one of those persons who's afraid of drinking again. Like I've got a good handle of what makes me tick, where the borders are, in terms of what would put me at risk. And there's nothing wrong with that type of confidence in our sobriety, that and it's where I cut myself off from input of others and not and go back to self-reliance that starts to fall off. And so it's not arrogance if it's truthful, right? And it's based in reality. So I
Well,
think
I appreciate you saying that because one of the things that brings me to the question that I've run into a lot with addiction, but also with eating disorders, which is, can I be completely recovered? And and it's like I've written one article that just points out that basically it doesn't matter what you call it. That's just simply semantics. And the truth is, the question is, if you say about your confidence, but if I say, do you have a plan? Do you know what you would do if you found yourself in shaky ground with your recovery? And you do. I know you do, right? It's like you know who you will call, you know what you'll do. And I'm going like, so that's the important thing. It's not, that doesn't mean because it's when we dust our hands off
mm,
and say, I'm so glad. After my first codependent workshop, I remember saying, well, I'm glad I've taken care of that family of origin stuff.
yeah.
The interesting part of the big book is when you connect the dots on the title page, it
Mhm.
does use the term recovered. How
Mm,
many thousands of men and
Mhm.
women have recovered?
Covered.
Past tense. And on page 84, at the end of step 9, it says we are placed in a
Mhm.
position of neutrality. He gives us
Mhm.
a synonym for recovered. If
Mhm.
you don't have neutrality with regard to your addiction, something's amiss.
yeah.
Right, right. Yeah,
And
it's that, and
yeah,
don't dust your hands off. Don't anytime the arrogance begins when we say, I'm completely insulated and safe from anything. Nothing can happen to me now. It's like anything can happen anytime.
Well, very quickly, he promises right after that statement,
Mm,
we're not cured,
right, right,
not,
right.
not
Good
of
point.
our addiction, though. I believe it's
Mhm.
not cured of unmanageability, not cured of our emotional non-sobriety. We are not cured. We have a daily reprieve from if we
Right.
want to have emotional sobriety, then we practice, as Alan said very clearly, our way of living 10, 11, and 12.
Yes, you're right. Good. Thanks.
Yeah, I really liked Tom when Rutledge when you brought in this piece about we're also not we're getting free from any expectation about how somebody's supposed to respond to us.
Yeah.
See, that's so important. In a healthy relationship, we don't make rules about how the other person is supposed to behave. We can make rules for ourselves. I can go to you and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, and
Mhm.
I really want to sit down and talk to you about the harm I've done, and I plan to try to do the best I can to repair that." Some people that have looked at the program called this step a social justice step. It's very interesting, and that makes sense in some way. We're trying to
Mhm.
bring justice to a situation where there wasn't any. In fact, Chloe Madanis and Jay Haley, two family therapists, use that whole model to address children being molested in families from a parent. And they used this whole social justice model to address this issue. And they had the least recidivism rate of any other approach to therapy in terms of dealing with this. Because when someone really gets it and has the empathy, and that's what their whole model was based on, is really empathizing with the other person and not and saying to the other person, how do you feel about what I'm saying? And not have any expectation that they've got to accept it. I don't trust you. I don't think I'm ever going to trust you. And the person's then, when they get to this place, it says, I understand how you
Yeah.
cannot do that.
Right. And it's like Julia said, we're not I mean, what you talk about radical, Julia was talking about, we can ask, but we don't even have an expectation that they will respond. We don't have, there is no expectation,
Yeah.
you know. If
And,
they
and
if they want to look at me and flip me off and go away, then I go, okay.
And Alan, this goes back to empathy, right? You've used this theme several times in our workshops. Is seeing people as they really are versus how I need them to be for me to be okay. Let them.
Hmm.
And let them be who they are.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yep.
Don't put
Sorry.
any
I heard that this
manual.
week from somebody. And she's like, it's an older woman in my life, a friend of my father. She's 85, and she said, I grew up in a house with a lot of judgment. And one of the things I've learned is to just let people be who they are. And I was like, yes, she's not
Yeah.
in the program.
Yeah.
That's wisdom.
Well, and except when they get on my nerves.
That's right. Okay. Well, thank you all for your input on this, Tom. Why don't we go ahead and wrap up this evening? We'll stop a little early tonight. I can use that.
Sure thing.
Quite a
Well,
day.
thanks everybody for being here yet again this week. We'll pick it up next week and continuing on step 9. I do
Quick
have.
question, quick question. What
Yeah.
was the name of the book that Herb mentioned and by whom? For
Forgive for good.
for
Fred,
good.
Fred Luskin, Luskin. Second best book I've ever read.
Very good.
Yeah, I just put that in the chat. So I
Well,
just
thank you, Herb. I'm assuming that I was the first book, the best book you've ever read. So
Sure, Tom.
we won't talk.
You can assume anything you want.
Thank you.
the question was this recorded? Yes, it's being recorded. I'll put the link in the chat in a minute. We have a YouTube channel. I do want to highlight some workshops that are coming up. Alan and Herb are going to be in Missouri on April 23rd and 24th, doing
August.
August, sorry.
April.
It's either you're really late or really early. I don't know. Alan's going to be at the Wilson House in for a weekend workshop on relationships. That's in October. Um, Herb and Alan quarterly series on Zoom for the Mary and Joseph Retreat Center coming up in September. These links and information's all in the chat. And Tom's doing a conversations with your eating disorder workshop, which sounds intriguing, Tom. This is great work. And
Yeah.
registered through his email address.
Yeah.
On top of that, I'll just put the opening announcements back in the chat, especially the YouTube channel where you can go back and listen to not only this one, but about 200 other episodes of this workshop we've been doing for the past 5 years. This has been an incredible journey for me personally, and I think there's a huge appreciation across the board.